Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. My name is Ele Belfiore, and I'm a Professor for Cultural Policy and Interdisciplinary Director for Social Inclusion and Cultural Diversity. And it's a great pleasure to be hosting such a lovely panel and rich panel. And I will introduce myself more fully and as we get to know the panel. For now, I've been given the task of raising or letting you know some key housekeeping points. First of all, there is no planned fire drill for today. So if the fire alarm goes, it's a real deal, and we will have to evacuate the room safely through the marked exits, and our lovely events team will be there to direct us. So please follow their directions. For the Q&A session, we will have a conversation with the panel. I have some questions prepared, but we also would love you to have the opportunity to interact and be part of the conversation. So when the time comes, for the people who are joining us, well, here in the room, please use the microphones that are in front of you. Press speak to be able to activate it so that we can hear you, and then press it again to mute yourself. And for those who are online, please type up your question in the Q&A functionality, and we have a colleague who's just taking note of all of them and who will feed the questions to the panel as they come in. So before we get started with the event, which is inspired by this book, which I'll tell you more about as we start the conversation, which was edited by the Women in Academia Support Network, which I am a founder of and a member of and a director of. We have a lovely message from Vicky Williams, who's the CEO of Emerald Publishing, which published the book, and who has been a great supporter of the network, and who's been a tireless campaigner for the support of women researchers and raising awareness of the inequalities that exist still in academic publishing and how much more difficult it is for women. So we will hear from Vicky, and then I will welcome the panel onto the stage. So if we can play Vicky's message, please.
Hi everyone, and happy International Women's Day. My name is Vicky Williams, and I'm CEO of the academic publisher Emerald Publishing. I'm really sorry not to be there with you all today, but thankfully with the power of technology, I am delighted to be able to share a few words with you. So the theme for International Women's Day this year, as I'm sure you're all aware, is Inspire Inclusion. And the International Women's Day website tells us to actively include by questioning if women aren't present, by calling out both discriminatory and poor practice, and by taking action against inequity. And it asks us to be really conscious with this, so no sweeping policies or statements, act each time and act every time. And why is this important in publishing? Well, we mirror the academic community and we're trusted with their outputs. It's crucial that we act on this trust by providing the right environment and the right checks and balances to ensure that all voices in the ecosystem are both represented and heard. And research is obviously better for diversity and inclusion, and society benefits as a result. So looking at the list of potential actions on the International Women's Day website, I took a critical look at where Emerald is organisationally. I won't read through all of this, but it's fair to say we've done a lot while still having a long way to go. Like many in our industry, we're a female dominant company. We've done a lot over the past years to balance our leadership profile. But we have a large number of women in entry-level roles, and we have a disproportionate amount of men in the better paid technology and data roles. And this means despite our healthy balance, we still have a gender pay gap that we need to address. We've also done a lot to create the right environment for women to thrive, so fully flexible working, enhanced parental leave, carers leave, menopause support, and so on. But we struggle to get participation in some training and support programs, probably quite frankly because women are already too busy. So we're trying to learn, we're trying to adapt, and we're trying to do what's needed to ensure inclusion. And because of the work that we do, we can't stop with internal improvements. So inclusion needs to be reflected in everything that we do. So we need to influence positive action in our editorial board, authorship and reviewer composition. We need to publish on the topics that are important in driving equity and inclusion. And we need to ensure that women are seen as protagonists in both research papers and case studies and so on. So as I said, we still have a way to go, but I'm sure you'll all be supporting the ongoing brilliance of women today, whilst also recognising that we're not an homogenous group and we all have unique circumstances as well as something unique to offer. So have a fabulous event and thanks for listening.
A reminder of how even for a publisher who's trying to do the right things, there still remains quite a lot to do. So let me invite the panel and switch microphone. So we're welcoming to the stage Noah, Katrina, Vamuni, and they will introduce themselves to you because I think they can tell about themselves better than anyone else. And before we start, I'll explain how we took inspiration for today's event from this little book. So what emerged from supporting women through the Women in Academia Support Network, which is a network of about 15,000 women worldwide, academic women, was that there, whilst on the surface we're all doing the same job and we're all having like a career or research career in industry or whatever it might be, actually the route through which we'll get to that can be very different because people's circumstances can be very different. And some women's journeys to an academic or research career can be slightly more fraught with challenges and obstacles to overcome. And actually it could be inspiring for young people to hear about the stories. So we got funding from Facebook to produce this book, and which collects some of these stories of non-traditional women from non-traditional backgrounds, or women who had disabilities to overcome, or who came to research through portraits and non-standard routes, and to distribute this freely in schools for girls at that point in their lives where they have to make important careers about what decisions about what study that will affect their career, to encourage them to consider research as a career, even if it does, they don't see themselves as obvious candidates for that kind of route. And that made me think that, of course, we must have so many similar women who have come from abroad. Interestingly, we all have, none of us is British around these tables, so we've all had some kind of journey to get here to Aberdeen. And we felt that it would be lovely to find out more about those journeys and celebrate the women in Aberdeen who have managed somehow to find a way here, and find out how what this journey was like. So this is the topic of the conversation. We hope it to be informal and relaxed, and we'll start finding out more about our panel, starting from Noor.
So hello everyone, my name is Noor Halabi. I am an interdisciplinary fellow here at the University of Aberdeen, recently joined. in social inclusion and cultural diversity. So that's the theme that I'm part of. And I'm also situated in the political science field, PIR.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for coming to this event. My name is Ekaterina Pavlovska, head of School of Engineering here in Aberdeen, and I came more than 20 years ago. Although I came from abroad, I consider myself as true Aberdonian already. So, hi everyone. I'm Veroni Romero-Siri. I'm a lecturer in management, specializing in organizational psychology in business school. My research looks at gender, intersectionality, and women's experiences at work, particularly in marginalized communities. I'll speak a bit more about it when we introduce our career. Thanks. Oh, I'm also the EDI lead for the business school. Thank you.
So wonderful diversity on this panel, and also diversity of career stages, diversity of disciplines that we cover. So thinking about this idea of journeys of taking you here, and also thinking about our motto of breaking boundaries. Can you briefly outline your career journey and how it's brought you here in Aberdeen? And if you think back to that journey, what were the boundaries that you had to push, and the barriers and obstacles that you have to overcome?
So I'm guessing I will start. And I think my experience has been very circuitous, really. So I'm originally Syrian. So that career in academia was not really in the cards for a lot of people for me growing up. And I was displaced twice, which also factors into how I experienced academia, how I experienced my entire journey in education before getting to the level of higher education as well. And in some ways that was a disadvantage, but in many ways it was also enriching because I experienced so many different cultures by the time I got to college that it was really something I was excited about. And another thing that might be interesting as well, it might have a bearing on later in my career, is everything but 1 year of my higher education journey, which took about 10 years. It takes a long time to train someone. Everything but that 1 year was funded by scholarships, and that is really, really important to talk about as well, what influence funding has on encouraging people from backgrounds like mine. In fact, when I graduated, my graduation speech, because the place I did my PhD, you get to give a speech the day you graduate. That was the thing I spoke about, is the importance of someone taking a chance on someone like me and giving them scholarship, and what difference it made for my family's life, my life, and academia, really, with whatever I contribute humbly to the profession.
Yeah, and that dialogues in academia, absolutely, and that's very sobering thought at a time where higher education is sort of stretched, and that funding for scholarship is being tragedy. And anybody else who wants to look back on that journey?
I guess we can do it in turn. So, as I said, I came to Aberdeen more than 20 years ago. I came as a postdoc, so I was really, really fortunate that when I did my education, it was free and open for all in Russia. So I did my undergraduate degree, and then I did my PhD, and it just happened to meet the love of my life, and I came here as a postdoc. So you never know where your journey will take you, and I think overall, of course, it is a hard work always, but I feel like I was very, very fortunate in my journey, in my career, and I always had support of my family, of my parents, who did absolutely amazing things, facilitating me being able to participate more fully in different academic activities by helping me with my kids. And also, colleagues who were supporting and helping and mentoring me through my journey. But of course, it was not always a plain sailing. And this year we're celebrating 100 years of engineering in Aberdeen. So it took 90 years to appoint first female professor. So we got our first female professor in 2013. So that just kind of highlights the way we operate, and I think, you know, there was a lot of done for equality, but we can see the things changing now. And you know, in my more than 20 years career in this university, I can say that a lot of things change, and the changes are positive. Yeah.
Thank you. Hopefully change might speed up a little bit, so we don't have to wait for 90 years time. But yes, it's good.
Yeah. So my career journey made me think a lot. Actually, I've had quite a varied journey in academia. So I completed my PhD in 2007 at the University of Nottingham, and I went on to do a postdoc, which is where I met my postdoc supervisor, who was really instrumental in supporting me. At the time, I was an international student, and a lot of you know that takes a lot more effort. You know, I had to be in the top 10% or top 1% all the time to be able to receiving anything. But working with this amazing person, I think he was, I think I look back now and I realize I was very fortunate to have worked with him. He's wonderful in his research, so I learned a lot from him. But at the same time, I was able to, I suppose, be safe from what other women experience in their early careers. And I didn't know that till I continued on. But in my career, after Ref 2014, I took a career break. At the time, Sri Lanka, which is where I originally was from, I was sent away from the war. And actually, I studied in Aberdeen as a very young girl in school. And so that's, for me, I wanted to do something for my home country because the war was over and there was a lot of reclaiming of rehabilitation work. And I got involved in refugee rehabilitation in Sri Lanka and other contexts. And it didn't take me to Sri Lanka, it brought me back to the UK and to working directly with refugee communities in Devon, where I was based at the time. And still am. And working there, women started approaching me, starting to talk to me about the difficulties that they were facing within the resettlement and various other avenues. And it was intriguing. And actually my work developed out of that time, working on the ground with these women and seeing their journeys, their experiences, their strength, but also allowed me to reflect on my own journeys, because I'd, in a way, denied it to get on and to feel strong. Because if I looked too much down that steep cliff, I would never climb up. And a lot of women professors say that to me. What brought me to Aberdeen is actually one of my recent mentors. She's one of the few Black professors in the UK. And I happened to meet her through what we call the Chartered Association of Business Schools mentorship programs. And I had come back to academia because I really missed it. And I started doing research because that's what I really loved. And while I was in the third sector, I was not, more than kind of doing hands-on work. I was thinking about questions and getting excited about how I could kind of create opportunities through my research. And so it was her suggestion to join Aberdeen, and so I blame her for being so far from home because I'm from the Southwest. But actually, it's been a wonderful experience and events like this, and I'm meeting a lot of women across the university who are doing really inspirational work. We're just only 4 people of those, and to just today. So that's what brought me here. But as you can see, there was a lot of different agents in my success, and there's no gender, there wasn't color, there wasn't, and I think it's just the right people. And I think I was fortunate that I know other women have had different experiences, but I also believe that we can, with those experiences, we can be those people, those doorways for other women to walk through. And I'm really glad to have these kind of WIASN network and all these women talking openly about their experiences, because I think it's much needed. Thank you.
No, absolutely. You raised so many important points, and this was a question that I had for later on, but since you're going to raise it now and as a follow-up to your experiences, because really what emerges from your personal experience is the importance of mentors and allies, and actually how what radical difference they can make, because of course there are so many women whose experiences so different and who feel, held back by their gender, their ethnicity. And then there's all the family home balance, which we'll tackle because that's another big issue. So how rare are good mentors, and also how do we encourage our colleagues, our more senior colleagues, our male colleagues to step up and be those crucial mentors who can really make such a life-changing difference to people. Any thoughts on how do we grow our allies?
Yeah, I can continue from what I was saying. So for me, so one was my lecturer. So I met him first during, and I wanted to do a PhD with him. So it's that, I was genuinely interested in the work we did together, and we worked for many years after, and he mentored, and so it's that natural progression from working together, commitment to what I'm doing, to the research and the growth out of that. But also things like the Chartered Association of Business School and PAS mentorship programs, and also committees. So I'm part of the British Psychological Society. And there's a lot of great people working in those places. And when I joined the committees in those kind of societies that are related to my discipline, I can see people, I can notice people that I would really love to be, close to and understand their journeys. So for me, it's been various places, but mainly through it started from this discussion of research or personal experiences, or can you help me, or can I be in touch with you once a month just to let you know how I'm doing. And the University of Aberdeen also has a mentorship program, which is wonderful. It's led by Karen, and I recently found a mentor through that program as well from medical school. So so the university has something in place for schools, and I've heard other colleagues who've spoken really positive about that.
Being proactive seems to be
definitely for me. It has been,
allies and mentors.
I think it's being proactive is very important, but I think a lot of this mentorship will probably come from the senior colleagues you work with. So probably one of most influential mentor was my postdoc supervisor, whom I work very closely, and still working with him up to now. And what made a difference for me and made my career successful is the recognition from him of my talents and my achievement at the point which I was not even thinking about it. I just doing my work. I was doing my work. I wasn't thinking about applying for the next promotion, applying for the next grant. I was buried in my papers and my calculations and in solving, very specific research problems. But it was he who was basically looking at what I have done and comparing me with the other colleagues in our school and in the field, was saying, look, but you have done it, you should now apply. And this encouragement was incredibly invaluable. And again, later on, one of my line managers, he was doing pretty much the same. He was saying, you are brilliant, you should think about the next step. and this was instrumental. And as I say, I will say that it's, you know, kind of, you can see it in two different ways. You can see it, oh, it's all me because it was all my hard work, which is true. But equally, I was really, really fortunate to meet the people who recognize my potential and my achievement, because in many cases, we are just so busy doing what we need to do that we are not thinking about this next step. We are not comparing ourselves with others. We are not making this promotion application. And I think we need to realize, and that's specifically relevant to women, we know that, you know, kind of when the next job comes along, the woman will apply if she has 110% of all the spec, and the man will apply if they have, I don't know, 50 or 70. So that's the difference. And we as a woman, we need to recognize it ourselves, and we need to be more proactive, and I think we need to be more confident as well.
So a bit of encouragement helps. You are a slightly different career stage, so I don't know if any of these feels relevant, sounds relevant. So does it sound good? Does it sound like somebody like that would be helpful?
I mean, I think maybe my experience was slightly different, maybe in timeline, in the sense that maybe by the time I was doing my PhD, there was no shortage. I think in many ways, which is a really happy thing to be experiencing, there was really no shortage of allies. So one thing that's really interesting, I thought, was that often the allies didn't recognize themselves, and they needed to be sort of assert themselves a little bit better and see what impact they're having. So my first person who really inspired me was a school teacher who thought the questions I was asking in class were worthy of doing a PhD on, which she was a chemistry teacher. I didn't pursue a PhD in chemistry, but it just told me I had that ability of thought. I recently sent her a letter, but she actually didn't know that she was that influential in my life. And I think just reminding people what power their words have when dealing with students is really important. It's a good way to cultivate allies. And I think seeing people like you is really impactful. So when I was doing a PhD, one of my professors was the late Dr. Klaus Krippendorf, who had gone through displacement during World War II. And it was really important to me, perhaps not because he was literally mentoring me as he went about how he experienced academia, but that someone like me who had experienced displacement like me in some ways encountered academia and got through it and was very successful, that his entire existence was important to me. And I think, you know, the university does a really good job of that, having a panel like this that's so diverse, where you look around and go, I can see myself in all of these different people. And that's really, really impactful for students.
Yes, and that's a beautiful reminder, I think, of the impact of teaching, which we don't, you know, busy as we are, you know, worrying about student evaluations and this and that, we forget actually we unwittingly and unknowingly may actually shape lives, which is an incredible responsibility and slightly terrifying, I think, but also what a privilege. And of course, I haven't had a great mentoring experience, but then I can see how the solidarity of other women and having that safe place where women can share experiences and feel validated in how they're experiencing discrimination or just the difficulties of being a woman in academia kind of made up for it a little bit. I think it's that kind of support, encouragement that is needed and required from wherever it may come from. But it's such an important thing. And one thing, moving on slightly, that you mentioned, Katerina, that I suspect every woman in this room could relate to, was how difficult it is to balance it all out. Because very much in our society, whether it's children or whether it's elderly parents or ill relatives, somehow the caring burden is still largely expected to be fulfilled by women. So in a sense, it becomes a juggling act, because these are the tough jobs that we do in terms of time commitment, and then you go home and it starts all over again. And I think where it gets really tricky is that as an institution, you can have really progressive policies and you can do all the right things and be really serious about gender equality, but you can't really have an impact on people's home situation. So that's a tricky one.
Well, I guess I tell you, and I mentioned already that, kind of for me, if you're a researcher working in academia, you're early career researchers, you need to be out there promoting your work. You need to present at the conference. You need to link your network. You need to meet people, discuss ideas, share what you have done, see where the trends are, and so on. So I mentioned already I have two sons. I'm fortunate they're grown up now. They're 21 and 18. So I feel like I have done my bit. I'm very pleased about this. But obviously I was a postdoc and young lecturer when they were born, and any participation in conference, it was all kind of course in person. We did not have any online options. I could not just put them in the nursery and participate. So I got a lot of help from my parents. It was not easy. It was not straightforward. I had to fly them from Russia at that time. Every time I did not go to too many. Believe me, it was not an option. But again, I say I was fortunate. They were willing to stay with my boys, and it was open. If it happened this time now, it wouldn't be possible because of the political situation and everything. But I think we do need to recognize that this is what might hold people back. And I remember comments, from my senior colleagues at one of the conferences abroad saying, look, you're absolutely amazing because, kind of how do you manage to come even here? Your presence at the key event and, kind of so many women just, stay behind. And, it's, again, I will repeat it again and again. I was very fortunate I had the support from my parents, but it's also very conscious decision of recognizing the importance of doing it and making an effort. So I think, we all make our own choices, and sometimes we can't influence what is happening in the society, but maybe we should. Maybe, kind of we need to change this perception that if you have children and if you're a woman, you should stay home with them. So this is, kind of all of us collectively trying to influence what the young generation think. It's incredibly important. And I certainly, I do what I can with my students and, kind of just being present in the classroom and showing a role model to my female students, but also to my male students, saying that this is the normality, that you should come to the classroom and you should expect a gender mix, kind of in those who are teaching you, whether you are in female-dominated area or in fact in the male-dominated areas in engineering, but also at home, because this is, what the messages I give to my kids and explaining to them that where we struggle and what equality means, both in societal settings, but also in family settings.
Yeah. I think one interesting thing, so I don't have children, but I had an elderly parent that I was caring for at one point in my career, very recently, actually. And there's a lot of intersecting things. So you can't, as a manager, you can't control someone's family life. You can't control their life journey that has led them to that point. You also can't control immigration law. So in the case of caring, an immigrant employee may not be able to take caring leave in the same way. And so therein lies the importance of a manager who sees and navigates these very difficult circumstances that we all face. We can't fix the entirety of society, social expectations that caring falls on women, everything structurally, but we can learn how to navigate it. And I mean, this is awkward to say when your line manager is on the panel, but I am very lucky.
This is not fit.
But my land manager wrote the book, so it's a real awkward situation where you're like, well, but that therein also lies the importance of, as managers, thinking, how do you navigate these things? Because you can't fix the world, but you can make strategic decisions of how you can see the humanity of your employees. It's very awkward to say. It wasn't fixed.
Yeah, similarly, I don't have children, but I can comment on about the students. In my early career, I think I took it for granted that I was actually in a position of responsibility where, by being in the role, by leading a classroom, by presenting myself, as an academic, that I was actually influencing the mindsets of young people. And it's only when I stepped away from, academia, I realized, wow, what a wonderful opportunity that was. And students do write back a few years later and say, oh, I've gone into this industry because of what, or that conversation I had with you. And, those are the things I really missed when I was away from academia. And when I've come back, and I don't take any class for granted anymore, because I know that in each moment, and whenever I teach about equality, I do bring the reality into the classroom and discuss those issues and allow that space for young men and women to actually talk about the challenge, or, oh, is this something that we will face? And almost see the surprise in their face, because at that, in first year or even third year, they're not exposed to the work environments yet. They don't see the gender parities, the wage gaps, and, the realities of gender equality that we're all dealing with and trying to make a difference to. So I think that is a place, I think we are the doorway just by being there, obviously teaching them good stuff and hopefully encouraging them to be in research. And yeah, I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us to present that example at the University of Gender Equality.
Absolutely. Thank you. I think I will ask one last question, and then I will move to asking the audience, both in here and online, if they have any questions for our panel. So, having acknowledged that there's a societal change that is required for an ideal state of equality to be achievable, nonetheless, what could Aberdeen University or the higher education sector more generally do to bring about positive change, even during financially challenging times like the present, because the whole sector is struggling, and we know that whenever a financial an industry or sector struggles, but often the repercussions are felt more harshly by women, not just in higher education, but anything. It happened with COVID. Whenever there's some disruption, women are worstly affected. So perhaps small things that come, rather than big schemes are super expensive. What could help? What could we do that would help?
Maybe I will talk about what we are trying to do, and I'm not saying that it's the solution for everything, but what we do recognize is the small changes can make a difference. We talk about kind of hearing the voices. We talk about bringing right people around the table, and one of the things which kind of I personally in different roles which I hold in the university try to always do is to make sure that whenever we are scheduling important meetings, I don't know, kind of examiner meetings, kind of school staff meetings, something which affect everyone, we always try to be very, very mindful and cautious not to put it in the school holidays time, for example. We can do very little about the summer. It's a long holidays, it's inevitable, kind of will not be inclusive for everyone. But if you think about outside the summer, then moving examiner meeting in October by 1 week made certainly for me, and I know for all the colleagues with parental responsibilities, a lot of difference, because if you schedule it in a time when the schools are not off, then you allow more people to come, then you allow women to participate. The other things which we did in engineering, and again, I know how important it was for me coming back from maternity leave, have a flexibility and cover just in case something unexpected happened with my kid, and the nursery is closed or they're sick, and I know how much stress it was when you have to go in front of your students and then something happens at home and you have to stay behind. So we always now when our colleagues goes on maternity leave, when they come back, we're trying to allow a few months of kind of flexibility on coming back. We always allow, maybe don't put them to teach from the day one when they're back. We have 3 to 6 months for them to make sure the kids settle in the nurseries and they have the childcare arrangements in place. They can come and deliver without the stress, because this makes a lot of difference. We're also trying to have someone who can step up and help them if they have to. I know it makes a lot of difference for me. I know that I only use it maybe once or twice for my lecture, but that was incredibly important. And so we're trying to do it for all our female colleagues. So kind of small steps, but I think we go some way.
They go somewhere. In fact, I'm thinking, should we look into whether they could be generalized to all schools? Because there's nothing particularly engineering about them, really. It's just good supporting running of a school, but it could be any school. Thought. I see I know the same senior management team representative in the room. So just a thought, expanding the practice. And any other thoughts?
Yeah, something we've been talking about in the Race Equality Charter working group is about being mindful of inequalities, of imbalances, and keeping those in mind during this financial difficulty. And whenever there are even maybe requests for redundancies, we need to look at where the requests are coming from, and why those might be, and be mindful of whether the disparities in gender or race are going to be affected, much more. So the recovery, after whatever we're going through could be more difficult. And so there could be impact at the ground level for, like, say, role models, as well as the long-term welfare of academic careers as well for the university. Because one of the first people to go are women professors, the first people to stand up. And even though they're near the end of their careers, they're really important role models to be around in the schools. And I think it's really important to address that in when the requests come in and when the schools consider who's going, who's staying. So I think that's really important to consider, the long-term effects of times like this.
Well, anything that would help
I
that you want us to do?
I will be humble in the fact that I admit I'm relatively new, so I'm very excited to hear some of these things as well, and I'd like to get involved in them. But a few things that I think struck me when joining Aberdeen is that obviously the sector in itself is going through a very difficult funding environment, and I firmly believe that we all do better if we encourage everyone to thrive. So I do think there have been several events that allow everyone to come in and brainstorm ideas for applying to funding and empowering people to think you are worthy of applying to funding, you should apply to funding, and we will mentor you through applying for funding. That is really important. That will be mutually beneficial for the university, for all kinds of staff, as well as for science altogether. It really enriches research to make sure we have all perspectives on board. And the other thing I think would be really interesting to think about is that I'm more interested in equity than equality, in the sense that treating people equally is not necessarily fair. I'm more interested in thinking about how people may be different. Women are vastly more affected by health issues such as autoimmune disorders. They have very different environments and expectations from society. So simply the act of treating women colleague and men colleague equally in an instance may not be an actually good idea all the time. It's great usually, but just thinking, being mindful throughout of what about society are we making sure we don't replicate, what systematic injustice may be taking place that we don't want to replicate in the workplace.
Absolutely. And I think also sometimes, I think what I love about Ekaterina's contribution is that sometimes small things can have a disproportionate impact. So actually, sometimes it's not about throwing lots of money at things and problems. So I'll end this bit of the conversation with a personal story. During lockdown, I was diagnosed with ADHD, and I was actually one of a large number of women diagnosed with some kind of neurodivergence during lockdown, because of course lockdown just messed up all our coping strategies. And so when I applied for this job, the job I have now, 2.5 years ago it would have been, I was a bit frustrated because I'm very much open about this and very much about we need to talk about disabled people at work in academia, because academia is not really very friendly to them, so we need to speak up about their needs. So I always declare it, but it's very frustrating because there was no box that made sense to me. And the closest thing, I'm not in a wheelchair, I'm not deaf, I'm not blind, and so the closest thing that I could tick was learning difficulty, which I don't think really really represents ADHD. And you were applying for a senior academic job and you put learning difficulties, felt a bit weird. So I was having coffee, I was just started having coffees to meet people, and I was having coffee with a deputy HR person. And so those who know me will know I was having a little moan and saying, I'm having a great time, but that form, I really didn't enjoy that form. And he didn't know, and he was horrified. And he said, I can't believe. And I said, I swear. And so I moaned a bit, and he said, you know what, I'll fix this. And I just thought, okay. And I didn't, email every week saying, did you do that thing? But a few months afterwards, when we were hiring for the interdisciplinary fellow, I got an email from somebody whom I knew, a woman who had applied. And she said to me, I know this will be competitive. I know I probably won't get it, but I just wanted you to know how wonderful it was for the first time. This was early career person, so they apply for jobs as daily. And I said, it was the first time that there was a box for me to fit, to tick, that made sense. And what that told her was that Aberdeen University, of course, assumed somebody like her would want to work with her. And then, of course, Aberdeen University couldn't see why she wouldn't. Of course, we want people with neurodivergence to join us. And it's incredible. She was so moved and she felt so validated, to the point that she said to me, I don't care that I don't get it. I'm glad I applied just to be able to tick that box. And I don't know how complicated it was to change the form online, but I can't imagine it must have cost millions. So sometimes when you're mindful about inclusion and you're mindful about diversity, small little changes can have a massive impact, change perception about the institution, change how people feel seen and valued in the institutions. And I think that those, even in tough times, those are the kind of change that we should be wanting to make, I think. So thank you very much, panel. I think we will open now to questions from both the room and online. So I'm looking at Marion. So Marion, you can wave at me if there are questions. Oh, there are questions. Are there questions in the room? We may start from the room, or while the room gets warmed up, we can start with online.
That would be super. Thank you. We've got a question, great question from Lucy Drysdale. It's like, how do the panel feel about the intersectionality of EPI issues? So bringing up what you were talking about there, Ellie, so that's race, gender, disability. So it'd be great to have a brief comment on that.
Anybody from up panel wants to comment?
Well, I think really important question. I think oftentimes we silo women's issues of women's issues, but actually there's so many intersectional elements of the things that face women. I mentioned disability and health and all sorts of other socioeconomic, political, and other things that may impact the journey of women that actually impact all sorts of other people as well. And through looking at intersectionality, it actually responded to one of the other questions you asked me earlier about how can you increase your allies once you start to get buy-in from people that actually rectifying this one issue of inequality in this element actually responds to many other needs we have as a society. You actually immediately gain more allies because everyone sees themselves as addressed by your cause as well.
Yeah, I can add to that. I think equality can be seen as two-level things. There's the explicit and the implicit. And for me, the explicit is explained by the things that we know, like pay gaps, and microaggressions and various things that we know about exist and are spoken about. But the intersectionality is actually talk much more about the implicit equalities that happen. If we take all the women in this room, we're all very different people. We have different things that affect us in our day-to-day lives and how we turn up to our research and to our classrooms. And so if I take a manager, if I was managing somebody who was a woman or a man, I would actually look at, I'll be informed about the broader issues that affect them. So make sure that I fight for the right pay for them when they get their progression, but also have conversations with them about, get to know them as people to understand what's going on for them. Do they have children? And, how does that affect their day? Can their work days be structured in a way to support their career growth, whether they want to be a researcher or teaching led academics? So yeah, I think it's a multi-pronged approach, and it's achievable. I think if things are named, if equalities are named, if there's a safe environment between the line manager and the person, those conversations can happen. And I think that's the most important thing for me. And also empowering people to ask for different line managers if you get somebody who isn't supportive, who can't understand that. I think it's an important thing.
Thank you. Katharina.
No, I guess to just said that, yeah, I think it's very important, and I think we need to look holistically. And I agree with Varine that it's not, we should not look at gender or race or anything else in isolations. We need to look holistically, and the aims of, I don't know, and I have to say that as a manager, you look at your staff, you look at your people, and at least we're trying to create the environment when everyone thrives. Whether we succeed or not, that's a different story. But I think that we were there, and if the we were there, we'll try to.
Any questions in the room? Don't be shy. Oh, there's a question from right at the back. So if you press speak, your mic will go on.
Katrina, I was listening to your story of childcare and everything you had to do. I've been very fortunate in my life that I have a very laid back Dutch husband who's superbly happy to be the house husband for 10 years. And I'm just wondering, is there an issue beyond the employer level to say, where does the whole balance between the woman and the man in a household, talking about a traditional household, as to who takes responsibility for those childhood? Because you're talking as though if there's a call from nursery, automatically it's you that goes, automatically it's the mother that goes. And I wonder if there's a broader issue there that maybe let's employers say to colleagues who are not the mother in the household, say it's okay to you to go home if there's a call from the nursery. You shouldn't always be assuming it's the female. Because that felt as though it was really, really on you within your household, which I appreciate it's a personal situation, but a lot of us face that.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And you know, kind of now being a manager, I tell all my people that, you know, parental responsibility is parental responsibility. It's not mother responsibility, you know, and all the basically fathers in my schools, majorities will be fathers rather than mothers. You know, you are entitled to basically look after your children, and it's, you know, and also in engineering, we have a number of couples working, and again, it's not always the mother. So I think we do make effort to empower our staff to saying that it's not my wife's problem. And I think what is good about it that we have our now coming up academics, males academics in kind of getting in more senior roles, and they're not shy to say, sorry, I can't do it because I have to pick up, you know, my son or my daughter from the nursery or from the school or whatever. And I'm really, really pleased to see it, because I think this is how we're changing not only what is happening in the workplace, but beyond the workplace.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any other comments on that question, or let's see if there's any more, because we are slightly running out of time. In fact, slightly on the last question, either from the room or online. Marion, no. Last question from the room. Oh, we've got two. Okay, we'll take both quickly. I don't like to not allow people.
Actually, more than a question is a comment, because I thought it was very interesting to hear that, going back to the mentor figure, that a few of your mentors were not female, were male, but also the fact that they have to maybe encourage and support their mentees in different ways. And I wonder if when mentors are trained, because I think they go through training, especially, I mean, at least here at the university, on how to mentor, they should be made aware that maybe, you know, the mentees might have different needs. And as it was said, not treat everybody equally, but according to their needs. And what Ekaterina was saying, that women might need more support in being reminded to go for promotions, to go to conferences, and so on.
I think we all can agree with this. So.
Nodding to your comment. So, you know, let's, I don't know who does the training for those people, but let's let them know what we think.
So could I ask each of you whether you remember an incident or a person in your personal or professional life who inspired you to achieve as much as you have done, who suggested that women could go all the way? I can come in. Actually, Rona Flynn, who was at Aberdeen University, was one of my first role models. She's quite a key figure in occupational psychology and the human factors group. And we came up here to collect data for one of our projects, and I got introduced to her through of somebody working with her. And she's quite an inspirational figure. I mean, yeah.
I don't know, for me, it's very personal, and I think one of the inspirational figures in my life is my mother, and she also has an engineering degree. She works all her life in basically engineering company back in Russia, and I do know that she's very, very smart woman, but contrary to me, she has chosen her family over her career. And I know that she started with a PhD, but I think I was born, and then my brother was born, and she was too proud to go and ask for help and questions. And then she eventually gave up, saying, well, the family comes first. and I think, you know, kind of she brought a lot of inspiration. She, you know, when she was in her, I think, 50s, which, you know, thinking back, 90s, Soviet Union just collapsed, UN and Russia, women in their 50s considered to be old and only able to go and look after their grandchildren. So she took a job in the joint company between a Russian engineering company and then Pratt & Whitney, which is a Canadian helicopter engine design firm. And she spent 1 year traveling between Canada and Russia, being trained in Canada to do her job as an engineer. I think she's total inspiration for me. So she is absolutely remarkable.
I mean, I spoke earlier about some of the people who inspired me. There are actually too many to count, which is really a happy thing to think about for me, reflecting back. But one thing I think I would have as advice, perhaps a word of caution, men, women, non-cisgender people, anyone, before you think about partnering with anyone, think about what life you want to build and choose a partner that enables you, empowers you, and supports you to pursue that life. Because I actually think the biggest factor in my success in many ways has been choosing a partner who helped me thrive, who believed in me every step in the way. Even if there are days academia is rough and sometimes you apply for jobs and you don't get them, like you said. And there are moments where you need that partner to see in you and to support you. My partner spent a year dating me in the library because I was committed to doing a PhD. And if he wanted to date me, he was going to date me in the library or nothing. And he did. We've been married for some 10 years now. So, yeah.
Bless him. Is all I have to say. Oh, true love, excellent moms. That's an excellent range of inspirations, I think. Wonderful. Well, please join me in thanking the panel. We then, before we say goodbye, we'll have some fun reflection by our very excited to have our new Vice Principal for Education, Professor Jenny Murray, to just say a few words. Actually, we'll just wait for clapping and we'll clap for everyone together. But Jenny, do you want to speak from there or do you want to come up here?
Here's fine. Can everyone hear me? Yeah, thank you. Oh, thank you so much. That was really interesting. Just wanted to say, you know, it's been a really brilliant session. Thank you to the panel. Thank you to everyone who's joined today. And it's really important for sure that we, you know, we do support each other. We've got a lot of people here in academic roles and research roles. And supporting each other is really, really important. So what can we do to kind of build each other up and, you know, make sure that when we're really moving up on our careers, how can we kind of reach behind and help each other, pull each other up? You know, I've experienced some situations where, you know, people have kind of thought they'll close the bridge behind them. And so it's like, let's keep that bridge open and let's pull each other up. You know, I've been fortunate to have some really good female role models. I've also had some really bad female role models. And I think it's about, you know, just because things were maybe more difficult for you. So when I think back to, you know, when I had the kids and they were younger and it was perhaps a less flexible working environment, you know, we can be flexible now, we can support. So just because it's like that for me and it was more difficult for me at times doesn't mean to say, you know, it has to continue to be. So what can we do to learn from our own experiences, you know, to make things easier for others, to have that career and, you know, to have, you know, reach your ambitions and your goals, but also to have your family life and your family if that's what you want to do. So I think that what we've talked about today has really just been that snapshot of some of the progress that's been made, but there's also a lot of work that still needs to be done for that equality piece and for women in academia. I think for me, you know, coming back to some of the comments that we've been made around, you know, the kids and thinking about my husband and if people have made a comment to me and said, you know, it's really great that your husband helps, you know, with this and this. And it's like, well, actually, why am I not helping him? Because I'm pretty sure they're his kids as well. And I think he also lives in the house. And, you know, so I think it's, you know, we're helping each other. And so for me, we've all just mucked in together, me, my husband and the kids. And sometimes you do have a little bit of that guilt around, you know, kids have had to do things for themselves. But actually, it's not done them any harm. They're still alive. That's good tick. And they might be in therapy in years to come, but they're all right now. But what's really interesting is my son's at university now. He's here, and a really interesting one with, so he, you know, he can cook. He's had to. Apparently, I'm a very bad cook, and they've had to learn to cook. So they say. I don't agree, but no, they've done the washing, they've cooked and things like that for themselves. And it was interesting. He told me a story about when he moved into halls. He said the lad in the next room came through with the actual duvet and pillows and said to my son, "Did I just wash all of these in the machine?" It's like, no, you need a duvet cover and like pillows. You don't just, you know. And he knew how to do his washing and he's helped others. So, you know, I think that's a good thing. They've learned things that they've you know, that's helped them in life, and it's helped me because we've all kind of done that contribution. Somebody's dialing. That's my husband dialing in.
Yeah. Is your son calling to complain?
Yeah. And so just before I finish, I just wanted to say, you know, there is this inspiring quote from Gloria Steinem. It says, "Don't think about making women fit the world. Think about the world, you know, the world fitting women." I think that's really important. And I think just a final thing to say, you know, thanks for coming along. I think never let anybody tell you that you're not capable of something. I remember many people tell me, you know, you're not going to make professor. And that just pushed me on to make professor. I had to be more determined to do it and managed to do that by 40. And I was really pleased. And that's, everybody's got their own journey. But what I'm saying is, you know, never let anybody tell you that you're not capable of doing something. If you want to, you know, have a go, you know, go for it. Anything I can do to help anybody, I'm happy to help, unless it's cooking advice, which apparently I'm not very good at. And but thanks for coming along. Just to remind you, there's the stalls outside. Please go and have a look, and also take this opportunity to stay around and network. And yeah, it's great to see everyone. Thank you.